Welcome to Deep Dive with Dr. D. The entire goal of this podcast is to help you see that you have it within you to do amazing things. So the last episode, I left off with the move to Ellensburg. It's crazy to think I've lived in Ellensburg now for coming on 24 years. Yeah, in less than a month, I will have lived in Ellensburg for 24 years. At the end of the last episode, I had left off with that move. And just briefly before starting this recording, I found journals. I had started journaling on a computer. And if you've been following along with this journey of my life, I have this one journal where I have handwritten journals in it over the course of quite a while. But in 2000, I had started doing some journaling on a computer. And so I wanted to read right before the move to Ellensburg. You know, so much has happened in my life that I forget that I've had some, obviously some great successes, but some pretty tough points along the way. And I remember just being in a mental health crisis not long before I moved to Ellensburg. If you've been following and listened to Friday's episode, you'll remember I said that Stephanie almost didn't go with me. Our relationship was really rocky, but we decided to move over together. And so just a couple months before that move, I have a journal entry, January 28th of 2001. I feel like my life is out of control. I'm still consumed with thoughts of Stephanie being with Josh. I think that she is having lunch with him and not telling me. I can't trust, and I don't know why. I feel like I'm going to end up dead or in the hospital. I manipulate things she says to me to try to get what I believe the truth to be. I believe that she really does not want to be with me and she is only with me to try to work things out. I believe the same for myself. I hate it when I'm like this. I have missed another day of work because of my worry and insecurities. I end up taking time off work. I end up taking it to work with me and it rubs off on the job. I look back on other relationships I have and the same things have taken place. I paused. I fall in love, I screw up, and then I spend the rest of the relationship in mistrust and doubt. How do I stop this vicious cycle of pain? I'm not happy in this relationship, but then again, I haven't ever been happy in a relationship in the past. The same cycle over and over again. I want to call her right now to tell her not to give up on me. Another part of me wants to end it, but I can't do that. I feel like I would be repeating the cycle again. This is the toughest area of my life. I gave up the drugs and alcohol, the abusive cycle with Lynn, smoking, job jumping, but this remains an obstacle for me today. I pray to God that He gives me the strength I need to get through this. I had journaled several times before this entry in the last one, but I lost it when I redid the computer. I just read my entries and I see a lot of insecure feelings in my life. Why am I so insecure and doubtful of my surroundings? Why don't I trust? Why do I doubt so much in my life? God, I need your help with this. So that was January, the end of January 2001. And then May 11th, 2001, I have a journal entry. Well, we are moved and in place in Ellensburg. The town is great and the store is coming along well. We found a nice little one-bedroom with room for Cody. I found an excellent LPS, an assistant for my job, to assist me in running a great loss prevention department. We have a great management team at the store and we all get along well. Me and Stephanie are getting along pretty good. Still no sex. My desire for sex with her is lessened and I don't even worry much about trying when it comes down to it. I do wonder how long we will last without a sex life. I talk about it during the day with her and she says later, but later never materialize. She never has initiated sex and I don't much want to. My next journal entry, and then we'll get into the story of these early years of my time in Ellensburg, is January. So months and months later. So January 5th of 2002. Been a while since I wrote in here. A lot has happened, still in Eberg and still in LP at Fred Meyer. Me and Stephanie are still together, sometimes hanging on by a thread. We started seeing a counselor about a month ago. I wonder, though, if that's going to be able to help us stay together. We've had several large fights, with them usually ending up with us splitting up, only to come back together. Tyler is doing well. The holidays were nice. We spent them with Cindy, Tyler, and her parents. Today I'm frustrated because I had made plans for us to take this printer back to Costco and use part of the money to get a membership. Well, Stephanie talked to her dad and he said he could get a second card on his membership. Initially, and now I don't like that idea. Even if he does get a second card, that means that we will always have to go together or Stephanie alone. I thought of calling my dad and having him send, this is interesting, having him send me a second card off his account, but then I will still have to wait for other people. It would be a lot simpler if we would just go and get our own membership rather than relying on other people. This just makes it more time consuming and a hassle to get accomplished when we could do it ourselves. I hate it when I make plans to do something that I want to do and they get screwed up. Then when I ask about what we're going to do now, she says we could go feed the horses. Not my idea of how I want to spend my day off. She made mention last night of talking about spending money. It's okay to buy stuff for this horse we couldn't afford, but when I want to go spend some money, we need to talk about the future. Well, was the future thought of when this horse was purchased? I don't think so. Let's see. One person working, barely making it. Let's get a horse. Let's do one better and get 2 horses. I don't call that strategic planning for the future. I don't believe anything is going to change. So let's talk about this. So we moved to Ellensburg. Our relationship really, as you can hear by me reading that journal, was really just, I say now, I stayed in that relationship about 5 years past its due date, so to speak. And that's not really a hit on Stephanie. We both had stuff and it was just a lot. But we moved, got a little duplex. I actually just rode by it on my motorcycle. And then about a year later, we were able to move out into the country. But before we did that, the horse thing comes into play. I'll never forget her dad calling one day without consulting her or I and saying, I got you a horse. I'm just like, oh yeah, I got to back up. So when we moved to Ellensburg, both of us worked for Fred Meyer. Again, if you remember, we met at Fred Meyer. She was working there. I was working there. When we were living on the west side, as they call it over there, when we were living in the Puget Sound area, we were able to work at separate stores because we couldn't work in the same store. So part of the deal with us moving to Ellensburg is my boss said she can work at that store just long enough to find another job. Then she can't stay there. So it was a temporary thing. And I think it was 6 months or less, maybe. I don't remember. But so that was in play. So for a little while, she wasn't working. She had quit. She had gotten to the end of the time and she hadn't found a job. Or I think she had worked at a Radio Shack in town for just a short period of time. But through meeting people, a girl that worked at Fred Meyer, we started hanging out with her and her husband. He worked on a ranch 10 miles out of town. And the opportunity came up for Stephanie to be a ranch hand, and we could live in this cabin, and there would be room for her to keep now 2 horses that we had. We couldn't afford. Anyone that knows anything about horses, they're not cheap. So we moved out in the country and 10 miles out of town. So here, this city boy, not only do I move to a very small city, then I moved 10 miles out of that small city into the country, into a little cabin. It had a little bunkhouse off of it. And but the good thing is the rent was really cheap and Stephanie now had a job, which we needed some income. So that was good. started meeting people in Ellensburg, meeting people in the recovery community. I was just talking to Katrina. Katrina and I's relationship wouldn't come into play as a couple. It won't come into the story until 2011. But I met Katrina. I always say me and her were friends for a decade. I met Katrina. I met Sarah. I met a bunch of people, Theo and Melissa and Rob and Robin and oh my gosh, not Norm. What was his name? Really good guy. Ken, he's a mentor of mine to this day. So we started connecting with people and having a social group, and that was good. But mine and Stephanie's relationship was still rocky. It was like I said, on and off. And what I just wrote in that journal about my insecurities and my fears and my instability in relationships was still in play. But one thing I didn't, I've never wanted to be my mom in that way. And oh yeah, it would be over here that we actually, yes, okay, let me get into this. So Stephanie had started talking to her mom again. Yeah. And somehow in this process, her mom had a husband, Steve. This guy was a treat. Stephanie's mom was very religious, and thus so was Steve. And I remember me and Stephanie had started going to this kind of startup church for a little while. And again, I don't remember exactly how this all played out, but her mom and Steve ended up coming to Ellensburg and needing a place to stay. Yeah. And where we were living 10 miles out of town, there was this little bunkhouse. It was basically, if you can picture it, just a really tiny, like when I say bunkhouse, it was a room. It was one big room, decent sized room, and a bathroom. That was it. There was no kitchen, but it was just off of the cabin. And the cabin itself is still there. It's like 100 and something years old. Cool little cabin. It's not real big. It has a kitchen, dining room, living room, one room that we used as an office downstairs. And then upstairs, it had two smaller bedrooms. So, and I want to say, living out there, once you got out there, it was really cool. It was living in the country. There was, it was quiet. It was peaceful, except when the Ellensburg wind was blowing. Because if anyone knows anything about Ellensburg, Washington, we have our wind and it's annoying. But it was always like, if you forgot anything, it's a 20-minute drive, 15-minute drive back to town. Now, so Steve and her mom. So, again, I'm wanting to keep our relationship together and keep us together. And so I was really just anything she wanted to do, I would pretty much do. I was just appeasing to her. I wanted to be whatever I thought I needed to be to make her happy. Then, maybe would work out. So, she started talking to her mom and then they needed a place to stay. And we were like, okay, well, for a month, maybe you can stay out in the bunkhouse because it's really not a livable place. Again, there's no kitchen. And they're adults, right? It's her mom and this guy, Steve. And so they move out there. And, yeah, one of my signs for Steve, and this is 2003, maybe. I don't know if Stephanie and I had gotten married yet. We were close. We ended up getting married, a rocky relationship, but I thought, well, if we get married, things will get better. Yeah, it didn't happen. Steve, I remember I went to this, we went and we were talking to some guys and he was looking for work. Now, mind you, Steve he had skills, I'm sure, but he didn't have like a degree in a certain field, or he didn't have training in any real specific field. He just needed to get a job. And so the guy was like, well, what kind of work are you looking for? What are you looking for? And he's like, well, and this is, again, 2003, even in this day and age, this time period, just thinking this would be crazy to think. But he's like, well, I just, I probably want to be in sales again. And I'd expect to make $5,000 a month starting. I'll never forget this. I'm like, oh boy. And he was a con artist. That's what he was. So her mom, mind you, this is her mom who physically abused her as a child. But understanding of that kind of scenario, she was trying to work for it. Stephanie was trying to make peace with her mom and try to have a mother-daughter relationship. And a significant time for me, I'll remember her mom was on the phone, and I had been upstairs sleeping, taking a nap. I think I had worked a graveyard, and I'll never forget this. Her mom's on the phone with one of those 1-800 numbers, a prayer line of some sort. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And she was upset because God wasn't providing for her and Steve. And she was ranting and raving about it. And I remember thinking to myself, wait a second. She didn't work. Her mom didn't work. I don't know why she never worked. I think because Steve didn't believe that she should work. He was the man of the house, kind of that really old school thinking. But it's like they both should have been working. But I remember her just pissed off at God because God wasn't providing for her. And here's what I've learned about God and the Bible is that, God gives us free will for a reason, to do for ourselves what we can. But that wasn't her mindset. And Steve got a job somewhere. I don't remember where. But the living situation out there didn't go well for too long. Yeah. Because they weren't contributing to the household at all. I remember right at the start, again, these are two adults, and he was capable of getting a job, but he wouldn't just get any job. He was waiting for the job. And we were tight as it was with finances, super tight. This is a period where I was a little better with money, but still not real good with money. And I always felt like Stephanie had big dreams of what she wanted and expectations, but the willingness to kind of do them. I remember once she said to me, because she was only working part-time and I was working full-time and doing some side hustles. That's just always how I've been. And she wanted to buy a house and wanted land. And it was kind of a little bit of her mom. It was like, well, she was like, you're the man. You're supposed to provide. I'm like, that's not the world we live in, right? It's like I was expected to do all of the working to provide. And I'm the kind of, if I made that kind of money, great. But that's not where we were. So that's kind of the scenario. Again, I'm at Fred Meyer. My work is good. I enjoyed working in retail loss prevention. My first year working at the Fred Meyer store. So this was a big deal for Fred Meyer, or for Ellensburg. And to this day, we jokingly call Fred Meyer the mall. It's the biggest store in town. And it's, where people go. We've got other grocery stores, but no other real like department store type stuff, other than Bi-Mart, which Bi-Mart's fine, but that's it. That's all we have. We have Fred Meyer, the mall. And so it was a big deal for Ellensburg. Of course, there were people that didn't like it, but most people were like, yeah, finally, we have somewhere we can shop. I remember one lady, she says, it was hilarious. She says, well, finally, at least I can buy a brassiere in this town. It was hilarious. I'll never forget it. It was so funny. But so most people were pretty receptive, and my work was good. So that was my job. Yeah, so let's get back to the family stuff. So Cindy's mom and Steve are living with us, not providing, and the guy was not actively looking for work. Her mom didn't work and said that I don't work. And Steve was just, I was pretty quickly seeing that this wasn't going to work. And so there was a lot of frustration around it. And it's that thing of, if you've ever let someone live in your house, it's like, what do? You kick them out, and then, it's like you feel bad. So, but the kicker was this, and I'm going to just peek here at these pages of journals. I don't think it's in here. We're excited about move. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that's the move. Start with the good. There's February 20th of 2002. I almost come to 6 years in recovery. Oh, here we go. Now for the relationship issue. So this is February 20th of 2002. Now for the relationship issues. I believe that me and Stephanie are done for now. She is going to move to her own place. We will see what happens in the future, but for now, we both need to take care of our own problems. Maybe then we can move forward with our relationship. And I wonder if this is... No, because we stay together. Spent time with Paul Rogers. Oh boy. Right at this moment, I'm hurt. I feel like Stephanie could care less about me and our relationship. She is already meeting a new guy and has his phone numbers. She plans on seeing him in the future. She says it is only to work with her horse, but I can... Oh yeah, he's a friend of Dave's. Oh boy. And I'm going over because this was hard. I think I had moved and I went and stayed with a friend for a little while. We end up back together. We actually went back together and we get married. Not to me and Steph. Oh, here we go. So 2003, we're back together. First 3 months of the year, not too awfully much has changed. Me and Stephanie are doing well, have had little troubles in our relationship lately. Tyler's been doing good in school. This was the great thing about moving over here is I'm closer to my son again. Can't believe he'll be 13 soon. Now my grandson, his son, is 14. Time flies. I really want to be more positive in my everyday living. Missed the beginning of my journey. All in all, things aren't going too bad. This was cool. Me and Stephanie are still together in 2003. We actually, you think I know my marriage date from me and Stephanie, but we do end up getting married. And I'm going to get back to the Steve and her mom thing. But this is kind of a cool story and the power of recovery. So I'm a person in long-term recovery. Remember, I was a convicted felon. I got the job at Fred Meyer. I end up winning a state award for crime prevention while at this Fred Meyer in Ellensburg. The Ellensburg Police Department nominated Fred Meyer and me in that location for a crime prevention award. So it was really cool. I actually got to travel to Olympia and get presented an award by the government. That was super cool. So one fateful evening, this is going back, this is probably 2002, somewhere in that range, 2002. Steve and her mom had been, basically just freeloading off of us, eating our food. And the other frustrating thing is they furnished that whole bunkhouse and they bought these fancy chairs. And so imagine you're helping someone, right? They say they don't have any money, but their behavior and what they're doing is completely different. And that's what was going on here. And so one evening, we're sitting at the dinner table, and somehow the topic of Stephanie being abused by her mom gets brought up at the dinner table. And Steve, it all comes back. Steve says to Stephanie, well, I think you need to own your part in that. That was it for me. I was done. I lost it. And I said, you guys are out. Pack, get your shit and get out. There's no way. I wasn't going to let him. there's no way. Can you imagine how she felt hearing that? Her mother horribly abused her as a child, and this guy's going to say to her, well, you got to look at your part in it. Okay, a child doesn't have a part in being abused. I was pissed. I lost it. So we kick him out. Get ready for this. This is great. It's not. Well, about an hour or so later, not too long later, there's a knock on our door. And it's the sheriff. Okay, hang on to your ass for this one. And I answer the door. I'm like, what's up? He's like, well, we got a call from your tenants. I'm like, what are you talking about, tenants? Yeah, your tenants out that they live out here. Yeah, they said you tried kicking them out. I'm like, yeah, they need to go. Well, you have to formally evict them. I'm like, oh my God. So this is the piece of work that Steve is. And so, yeah, we had to go through a months-long process to get them kicked out. And then the guy tried to get me in trouble at my work. Yeah, he did. It was ludicrous. So that was chaos there. So they moved out. And I've said it a couple times in this, and I'm sorry I don't remember exactly when it happened, but me and Stephanie did end up getting married. And it was, she had started going with her mom and stuff, started getting religious herself and felt like we should be married. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, because I was thinking this is going to be it. This is going to make everything better. And we ended up, she didn't want a big wedding. She didn't want a reception. So we went to the San Juan Islands and got a bed and breakfast and found someone over there to marry us, and we got married. So we're married, but none of the problems were still there. None of the problems went away, but in my best thinking, I was like, yeah, this'll fix it. I spent way too much time trying to get Stephanie to be something that she couldn't be. So the cool thing about moving to Ellensburg in those early years is I was able to re-engage with my son. Me and Cindy and her parents, that's been a years-long relationship to this point. So we spent some holidays down there, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and Cindy was doing well in her career. She meets a new guy, a good guy, in my view. I can't remember his name. Tyler knows. He still remembers him. And somewhere along the way, I don't know if it's in these early years. I want to say 2009, 2010. So it's later. Cindy's life, my son's mother, takes a significant shift because she loses her career, her job. But these years, everything's in that realm is pretty good. Tyler's starting to, when he gets into middle school for sure, he was having issues with, school and stuff. And so those problems start coming up a little bit in middle school, actually a lot. But I don't think we're quite there yet. So me and Stephanie do keep going. I know this is kind of jumbled, but this time period now, looking back, is kind of jumbled because there was so much back and forth. And then there was a night, and I think it was about 2003, where we have a big fight. And it turns into me throwing a laundry basket and then me holding her down. I never hit her, but it was an altercation. I'm not going to be dismissive of that. And that was, we split up. She actually leaves and goes and stays at a friend's. And then I end up moving out, and that was the first time we really kind of split up. There will be one more time we try to make a go at it, which is crazy to think. my mental health at this time, again, I'm sober and I'm doing recovery things. It's in Ellensburg that I really get involved in 12-step programs in AA. Prior to moving to Ellensburg, I maintained my recovery, but I didn't use a lot of 12-step. I would go to a meeting here and there, once in a while, and worked fine for me. And in Ellensburg, in this time period, I met some friends and get involved in AA and start doing service work. I'm still friends with many people because of those early years. And that's really helping me. I'm seeing a counselor. Me and Stephanie we were seeing a counselor for a little while. I think she was still seeing a counselor. So I'm still trying some things, but my mental health, it's a struggle. Depression was still very, very much a part of my life. Anxiety, worry, still very much a part of my life. And then it's about 2003 that I might have been a little before, but I start getting bored with the work at Fred Meyer. I'd been doing it for a while, and it's good work, but it's kind of gets monotonous. I tried going into the retail side. I go into a management program. And what it comes down to with Fred Meyer is we would have to move. If I wanted to move up in Fred Meyer in any way, we were going to have to do another move. And so I remember looking at Wenatchee, looking at Yakima. We even drove down to the Dalles because there was an opening in management down there. But for me, it was, then I'm away from my son. I didn't want to be that far from my son. I came close to accepting a position down in the Dalles because it was a ways away, but it was still doable. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it was just too far. I wanted to be close to Tyler. And so I make the decision to start seeking opportunities outside of Fred Meyer. So this is 2004-ish. Yep. I had been with Fred Meyer for 6 years. Fred Meyer always, in my view, treated me well. It was decent money, good benefits, steady paycheck. And so it was like, ooh, okay, what am I going to do? Well, remember, I had went to school previously to be a drug and alcohol counselor. And I had started making connections in the community, in the recovery community. I was on a couple committees in the community in the recovery kind of arena, and I had met a person who was working for a prevention organization. It was a nonprofit. And there was a position open. And it was full-time. And, so my thing was, ooh, man, because our financial situation, I couldn't risk taking a cut in pay or benefits, right? For me at that time, it was just too big of a risk. Because Stephanie at the time was still just working part-time, and we had a lot of expenses. We were always tight. Money was always tight. Alas, I said alas just once, Megan. I decide to do it. And I give my notice because the position, it would be the same money, the same benefits, all of that. And so after 6 years with Fred Meyer, I have a replacement for me. And I'm going to go spread my wings. I'm going to use some of that education that I earned before and go into the prevention side in the community with this agency. And I leave Fred Meyer. That was big. Fred Meyer was a big part of my life, and Kevin and Vern really gave me a big break and all that and getting me in there. But it was time. I wanted to stay in Ellensburg. I wanted to be close to my son. And I leave and go to this agency, and it blows up in my face. Yeah. It blows up in my face. And what do I mean? That person who really recruited me actively and really, was like painting this rosy picture. Yeah. Once I was there, it was not what it seemed. And so I quit. I was like, nope, can't do this. So here I am. I'd left Fred Meyer. I couldn't get my job back because I had my replacement was there. There were no openings for me to go back to Fred Meyer. And so I had to hustle. And I had a friend, Andy Jager, who I was doing some work with. He owned Papa Murphy's in town, and him and his wife had opened a Radio Shack, and I was doing some work with them. I was working on computers, and so what did I do? I started a business. I started working on computers for people. I ended up managing a system for an attorney's office in town. And then this is just kind of how I roll. I ended up getting a contract to deliver packages. You may have never heard of them, but DHL is actually an international company. And at the time, they were trying to kind of get in on UPS and FedEx home delivery side. And so they were just using contractors in this area. They might still be. And so I picked up a contract doing that. So I was self-sustaining myself, and having that entrepreneur spirit was really on fire for me. And yeah, I think this is when Stephanie worked at Radio Shack a little bit. She was wanting to be a horse trainer, and she was good, but it's a tough industry to get into and get a name for yourself. She was also then for a period wanting to be a farrier. I don't think she ever went to school with it, but she was thinking about it. So we were just managing, trying to figure it out. Again, the on again, off again. Now, we're married by this time. This is 2004, so we're 6 years. Yeah, 6 years into our relationship. Tyler's 14. This is a time period when Tyler was becoming a teenager and being raised in his mom and his grandparents' house. Tyler was pretty much allowed to do most of what he wanted. And anytime there was resistance, they usually caved. And this is when Tyler's struggles in school started cropping up. And when he would come up to visit me, I had rules, and he wasn't allowed to, just do whatever he wanted. And we had an incident out at the cabin where he had a friend over and, to stay the night when he came up for one weekend. And I went out there and I found cigarettes, and I was like, this is unacceptable. And we laugh about it now. Tyler wants a rematch, but so this was, we can laugh about it now, but he was like, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm like, okay, take your best shot. So he took his best shot. It didn't go well. I put him on the ground. He walked home. It was not a good situation. And honestly, I don't know if he came up again for a weekend with me. I'm sure he did, but he didn't want to. So him and I's relationship it started getting really tough. And it was really difficult for me because what I saw is at his mom's house, they had no boundaries with him. They had very little structure. I remember going down there and sitting down saying, okay, you guys, we need to talk about this. You got to check in his backpack. You got to make sure he's doing his work, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, okay, we're going to do it. And 2 weeks later. So for me, being part-time dad, it was really difficult for me watching this. But so back to the work situation. I'm out on my own. I'm making ends meet. I know the financial stress was high, but I'm not one to just sit still. And me and Stephanie's relationship, I'm sure I could find journal entries of kind of that same thing, just the cycle repeating itself. And then I was looking online or in an actual newspaper, really. And this is where I'm going to close this one up, and I'll start it up with how this all works out on the next episode. But I find an ad for a local little restaurant for sale. It was a sub shop, the Hungry Hippo Sub Shop. And I'm like, oh, and the price was pretty low. And I end up buying a little sub shop in downtown Ellensburg. This is 2005. About 2005, yeah. Because I have it for exactly 1 year before I close the doors. So that's where we're at. We're all next Fridays we'll go through the Hungry Hippo period and my return to active use. So by this time I'm 9 years in recovery. My mental health is a struggle. At best, I was seeing a counselor, actively engaged with a counselor. I was actively engaged with the peer supports. I was doing all the things, but it was a struggle. My mental health was stressful. And buying the Hungry Hippo, while I have positive memories, it almost was not almost, you'll see, it was too much. And I have a breaking point. Again, I'm going to close this one up. I have my dog Cody, and there will come a period where I have to make the decision to put him down. And with a period that I'll talk about in the next one where Stephanie and I know it's over. That's too much. And then the Hungry Hippo, the financial situation there is rough from day one and doesn't get better. Now I want to leave you with hope. As the sun is shining in my office on the side of my arm and the side of my face, and I feel that warmth of that sun, is that I live a life today where that depression and that anxiety has lessened greatly. Greatly. Like, I haven't laid in bed for days on end in years. I haven't had the level of anxiety and worry that I used to carry with me on a regular basis in a long time. It's not perfect, but I can tell you it's so much better. And you might say, well, why? What happened? Well, I'll talk in the next episode about my shift in my view on money, on relationships, and on my way of managing my recovery that I believe has been really instrumental in helping my mental health, in helping my recovery for sure, and in helping how I am in a relationship. Katrina and I have been together, it'll be, what is it this year? This is 2025, so it'll be 13 years married, 14 years together, and our relationship is strong. Stronger than any marriage I've had in the past. Stephanie's marriage number 3, Katrina's marriage number 4. And I can tell you, sitting here, you know, I have not once with Katrina, number one, we never have said, oh, this is, you know, never had the back and forth that I've had in every one of my previous marriages and relationships of, well, I'm just going to leave, or you're going to leave, or maybe we need time apart. Never. It's never even been an option. Why? Well, because we're both very active in ensuring that we take care of ourselves individually and taking care of our relationship and our marriage. So there is hope, my friends. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. Love to all. Thanks for listening to Deep Dive with Dr. D. You can follow me on my other social media channels by clicking the link in the description.